Hey guys, I know it's been a while again, but I've been dealing with my first semester of college and, being that I'm a STEM major and all, I've had a lot on my workload and I've just been struggling to balance out time for YouTube and recently I've been feeling that urge to make another video, but I just didn't know what to make it about yet. And that was until I saw Smile 2. I mean, that movie was great. I mean, I'm a massive fan of the first film and I was very excited to see the sequel. Though until the movie came out like a month ago and the reviews poised it to be, better than the first one, which I thought was actually insane because I mean, horror movies are rarely, even slightly good. But for a horror sequel to be good, I mean, that's about as common as a good Auburn team. Roll Tide. But in all seriousness, I was very surprised at these reviews because, I mean, I was certain that the movie would be awful because, look at other, not just horror sequels, but just movie sequels in general. They're rarely good at all. But before actually hopping into the reviews, I just want to thank the producers, the studios, Parker Finn, who's the director, the cinematographer, Charlie Saroff, I believe I'm saying that right, and the sound executive, Cristobal Tapia de Beer, for sticking with the franchise because, I mean, it's extremely rare for a sequel, especially a horror sequel, to keep any of the same higher-ups and executives, much less all of them, and it certainly made both of these films great. I mean, I think that's just an objective truth there. If you've seen the films, you know what I'm talking about. But also, this video does contain spoilers, but you kind of expected that clicking on this video, looking at the title. But with these credits out of the way, let's hop into the review itself. To begin with, let's talk about the issues with the movie so that we can get those out of the way because frankly, I would hate to end this video with negativity and like a bad taste in your mouth because it would do the film a disservice. I'm just being honest with you. But starting off with the biggest issue in most people's opinion is that the plot isn't all that different from the first movie. I mean, obviously there are major objective differences in like, characters and plot points and whatnot, but what I'm meaning is the plot structure isn't all that different. So some of the horror sequences in the movie are very similar to the first, but with obvious changes. The most glaring being the scenes in the bedroom, where it feels like the rooms in both movies are the same layout with like the same dark entryway being in line with the main character's head. If you've seen the movie, you know what I'm saying. I'm sorry if I'm like describing that bad. But it has, like when they're laying down, you can see the entryway behind their head. But a key difference between the two movies is that while the setup is the same, like the way the scene's directed and all, the execution is different. And like the way the scares are presented in both movies are different. Which actually I think is pretty thoughtful of them because let's be honest, the vast majority of horror movies reuse the same jump scares from each film and from other films. There's rarely much innovation in horror just because, it's a well overdone genre. But I think Smile and its sequel actually add to the genre as a whole. I think they were really creative with this, and it's one of the few horror movies and series that come out that are actually enjoyable to watch. They're both scary as well, which is also pretty rare in horror, which is kind of odd. But, I mean, a lot of quote-unquote horror movies are really just slasher thrillers. There's nothing scary to them. But to be fair, a lot of people do find slashers scary. I just not one of those. I think Supernatural is a little bit more scary. But also this movie, I think it just has a meaningful message. I think both movies do, actually. I don't think it's just for scares and, a cheap way to get money. Now, obviously, I'm still young, so my horror list and just, movies that I've seen, like the list of movies that I've seen, is not as full as like a more experienced or, an older person because, I mean, it comes with time. Seeing movies comes with time, and I haven't been on this earth that long. So, I mean, I guess you could say like more hardcore fans of this genre like have seen a lot more. But I mean, I've definitely seen more than the average person, I believe, because I grew up. My dad loves horror movies, and I kind of just inherited that trait from him. One of my cousins is actually a horror director, so I kind of just was raised to like horror movies and all. But anyways, with that out of the way, yeah, basically the biggest issue is just that the format isn't much deviated from the first movie. But don't let that fool you because there are some pretty big deviations as well. That I mean, they greatly add to the story and the film in general. Just the way it's directed and written and whatnot. But the biggest problem that I have with this movie is really that there was somehow less information about the antagonist in this movie than there was in the first. I mean, the only real information we got from it is that a character in the film, minor spoiler warning of course, does say the line of, quote, "You can call it a spirit or demon if it helps you understand it better," end quote, whilst also describing it as a metaphysical being. But that really doesn't tell us anything that we didn't already know about it, because, I mean, if you've seen the movies, you know what I'm talking about. But heavy spoiler warning incoming. And I'll give you a second to skip to the timestamp after I say it. But those who have seen the movie know what this character says is not reliable. So there's no real gain from this at all. So, in fact, I go as far as to say that the fact we don't learn anything about the being is actually the biggest issue with the movie, like I said earlier. And I think it takes away from just a little bit from, you know, the overall quality of the movie. But I mean, I also understand that not knowing anything about it is kind of the point of it, and that I'll elaborate on later. But finally, maybe not the biggest issue, but definitely the most glaring and upfront issue is the character with the most screen time. That's right, folks. Voss Water. I'm just kidding, of course. There's no real issue with the product placement. I just think it's egregious, and it kind of takes away from the intensity sometimes. Like, I mean, there'll be an intense scene, and like it's dark, and then you'll have like the bottle of Voss water, and it feels like it's kind of in a different lighting, and it's like, wow, you know, it's in the center of the frame. I wonder what the point of this is. But you know what I'm saying if you've seen the movie. But now that we're done with the issue this movie has, I think it's time we look at the highlights of it, because this movie has a lot more highlights than it does issues. Starting off, I just want to mention the sound design and how beautifully crafted it was, because I mean, honestly, it reminded me a lot of Hereditary, which is saying a lot, because I mean, I absolutely love Hereditary, and a lot of people do for good reason. But it's been 2 years since I've seen Smile, so my memory isn't the most, you know, fresh, like refreshed on the first one. But I'm pretty sure that I believe that the sound design, as in like the raw design, is better in this film than the first. So just a massive round of applause to Mr. Bayer. Sorry, it's like is it Chilean or Argentinian name? I think I looked it up. I could be wrong though. Please do not hound me in the comments for that. But anyways, just a massive round of applause to him for his execution, because I mean, it was phenomenal. And that's the best word to describe it. It was phenomenal. But secondly, on the topic of sound, I think the scenes with the pop music were actually pretty clever, because if I'm pretty sure you already know the plot of the movie or what the main character is, so you know I don't really need to explain the pop part of it. But as soon as Naomi Scott's character Sky Riley, the main character, started singing, I had the feeling that the lyrics were like rhetorically crafted, because I mean, if you've seen the first movie, you kind of get that there's a lot of rhetoric, and there's almost every decision in this movie, and both movies, have point to them. And anyways, I listened to the words instead of like the music, and you know, I was right. I mean, the lyrics of the song were an interesting and unique way to use foreshadowing, in my opinion, which I don't think I've seen a movie do before. I could be wrong, but I haven't really seen like a movie use unique music in that design. Now, obviously, like it's not necessarily unique to use music to foreshadow and like give off not necessarily hints, but like an atmosphere to scenes. But I think the lyrics of the pop music in the movie, if you listen to them, they kind of narrate what's going on and what will happen, which I thought it was pretty cool. But it also provides details into who Sky Riley is as a character, which I thought was cool. I mean, obviously, but continue on with the music scenes. They provide a pretty good contrast, and spoiler warning, of course, even had some pretty good scares in them. So in no way do I think they took anything away from the film, which is different than what I expected going into it. I mean, I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of like pop music. Not that it's like bad. It's not my number one genre. You know what I'm saying? But I also think the film did a great and even phenomenal job building tension. I mean, just like they did in the first movie. And I really like how they didn't rely on jump scares for horror, which, I mean, definitely the movie does have jump scares. It's a horror movie. You know, it's a mainstream Hollywood horror movie, but they didn't rely on it. I think the tension they built was actually just great. Like I said, phenomenal. And just for an example, and spoiler warning, big spoiler warning, when Sky is riding in the car with her friend Gemma away from the mental health facility, and it's revealed that she was never with Gemma in the first place, I was low-key terrified. Like, that was low-key a terrifying, intense scene, because if you recall from the first movie, the demon was nowhere near as aggressive with its use of psychological manipulation. I mean, it was pretty evil in the first. I mean, you know what I'm talking about. It was, you know, There's a lot of metaphysical manipulation going on. But oh my gosh, in this movie, it was just, it was like almost literally everything that happened in the movie was a lie in her head. Like 99% of what happened in the movie was literally just in her head from this, or rather, what the demon manipulated her to see. So I thought that was pretty cool. And it's actually genius if you think about it, because think about the differences to the characters, because the first protagonist was a psychologist, and therefore, they had a better understanding of the brain and how to defend against manipulation just on a base level, because they've studied that. That's their profession. And it's really cool thinking about that after the fact, because I didn't even think about that when watching it, the first time, but I don't think I've ever seen anyone mention that. Nothing on Reddit, no reviews mentioning the difference between that, but I mean, I think it's cool, and I think it's, just another difference between, the two that's exemplified is Sky's extrovertedness, because, with her actively reaching out to other people for help, you'd think that would be better, but the demon actually uses that against her. A piece of foreshadowing that I recognized when it was being shown, which I haven't seen anyone mention either, is the fact that right before calling Gemma in the beginning of the movie, spoiler warning, the side of Sky's face is shown with a tattoo of a demon clinging onto her ear whispering, which I didn't even notice until thinking about it afterwards, but it foreshadows that reveal later on. Going off of what I said about the entity being more aggressive in this film, I thought that was actually great, and it led to the ending, which I'll get to later, but, I thought it was going to be really hard to keep the momentum from the first movie, but they did. They kept building that speed and tension and aggressiveness from the main villain. But I love how, even with the expectation of plot twists, this movie still keeps you on your toes and guessing. I mean, literally to the last minute. I mean, there were obviously great uses of foreshadowing, but there were literally moments where the twists were, just genuinely shocking. I mean, spoiler, the second to last scene where Sky is, fighting the demon, honestly ended up being more enjoyable than I thought it would be when the scene started. I thought it would just be, oh, she's going to win, or oh, she's going to easily lose. But, it really wasn't. It was enjoyable to watch. And, I get it that a lot of people, think the scary face, boo, trope is overutilized. I genuinely think that the scene is an exception because, honestly, it was kind of unexpected. Yes, Smile has scary faces, obviously, and I knew that there would probably be something disturbing when the camera panned back to her face. But if you've seen the movie and you know what I'm talking about, I just wasn't expecting that. I was expecting, the gory, scary, messed up face, not. Listen, if you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. You know what face I'm talking about. And before I get roasted in the comments, no, I wasn't like mortified and just, shaking in my boots at that scene. It just took me off guard. I actually laughed at it. Not because thought it was funny, but because, I'm going to let y'all in on a secret, I actually laugh when I'm nervous or scared. So, I kind of just laughed it off. And I was watching on my own. I say I was watching my own. My roommate was in the room with me, and he probably heard me, laughing and, scooting back in my chair, but anyways, let's go on to the ending of the film because it's the next segment in this video. Now, I just want you to know that this segment will be completely full of spoilers, so I recommend skipping to the next segment of the video if you haven't seen the movie yet. But anyways, to actually begin discussing this, let me start off by saying that while I kind of predicted before seeing the movie that the actual ending would be the likely scenario that they would go with, I also thought that they did a good job leading us to believe differently. For a good segment of the movie, I thought that Sky would either end up dying in some other way or passing the curse on in a different way or somehow, beating the curse, which I'm going to be real with you. I didn't really think that, but you never know what they're going to do. Look at the plot twists. You just never know. You never know. But I never truly bought into the red herring that they would end it. Like I said, I'm not going to buy into that, but, it was always a possibility. But aside from that, though, I still think they did a good job leading the audience away from, the predicted ending. And I still think the execution of it was great. It wasn't masterfully done by any means, but I think they did a great job with it despite it being the most expected ending. Furthermore, I think that the monster's design was great, though it wasn't as terrifying as the one of the first movie. But I mean, let's be real here. That's just due to the lighting and the fact that, you know, I knew what it looked like beforehand, whereas, in the first movie, it was completely unexpected. I mean, that came out of nowhere. But, it just looked slightly less organic in this film because of the lighting and stuff. But then again, an organic looking, emaciated, leering, grotesque, amorphous, eldritch, demonic looking being. I mean, it fits way more in an abandoned, burning house than it does in a pop rock concert. So I'll add points for contrast. But now as to where I think the series goes on from this point, it's really a toss-up. But the three most likely scenarios, in my opinion, they are as follows. 1. There won't be a third movie. Now, this isn't as far-fetched as I was hoping because, I could definitely see some soulless corporate executive not giving a damn about this series and putting funding into another project. But I also don't think that it's that unlikely that the director or the writer and the story feels that his idea has been adapted enough, I mean, he just feels that, hey, this is where I wanted to take it and I don't want to go further, which is fine. But I would hate it because I would love more exposition on the monster itself, but whatever, I understand. I mean, it's his medium after all, I'm going to respect what the director says, but I also think that this is the most unlikely out of the three scenarios because this movie made over 5 times its budget, so I doubt anyone can refuse that much profit. I highly doubt it. And also, second theory is the next movie follows the same plot structure, and we follow yet another character haunted by their past, which the demon uses to manipulate their reality and ultimately ends up killing them. And I could definitely see this happening as the studio thinks, well, this formula has worked twice now, what's one more time? And yeah, I mean, there's really not much to say about that. That's what happens 99% of the time with other horror movies. They follow the same formula, and that's the track that this is on now. Well, I say that, but maybe it's not on this track. Or 3, we get a fully fledged third movie that follows someone or a group of people that now have the entity attached to them. The film will explore different ways that the entity behaves, now with more simultaneous examples of it that multiple people can observe. Due to attaching itself to thousands of people at once, I think that ultimately this greed, exemplified by the entity at the end of the second movie, I think it'll lead to its downfall. Thousands of people are now coming together to study the creature and how to defeat it, ultimately leading to its destruction or hindering its progress. And of course, this is just a fan theory, but it also might end with the protagonist feeling victorious, just for it to be revealed that A, it was all a mirage, or B, one affected person slipped through the cracks and the entity adapts to its newfound weaknesses and the curse continues. I also, this is just like a little fan thing that I think it would be kind of cool. I think the next movie would be called Smiles, or like Smile 3, with like the 3 being Elite Speak S, you know what I'm saying? But yeah, creative, I know, but just, a little theory, I throw that out there because it is my video after all. But moving on though, I really don't care if my theory comes to fruition. All I care about is that this series gets more care and love and development rather than, either ending with this movie or a poorly designed and executed third movie. So, yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope that I added some more commentary about this film, more than what you see on Reddit or other movie review sites, Twitter, YouTube, whatever. Because I really haven't seen anyone talking about what I talked about earlier, talking about the contrast between the two characters and just the other, rhetoric in these movies, which is actually kind of disappointing because these movies, they're really good. They're really unique movies. And I think the message behind them is great. And that message is like, when you're isolated, the first one was, being isolated and shutting yourself off from the people around you, that's, it will drive you down a horrible path if basically inheriting like the ailments that your parents had. So it's like a kind of a generational trauma message. Whereas the second film was talking about you can be completely surrounded by people at all times. You can have, a support system. You can have friends around you. And you can still feel isolated and alone. So I think I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's the message of the second movie. which I think both are very valuable messages because, I mean, I think we've all experienced, we feel alone sometimes, even if we objectively we have people near us. It's still, we know we still can feel isolated and feel alone. And whereas this movie definitely does not take shine a hopeful light on that, but I think it's a message that needed to be said in a movie, and I think the way to execute it is good. Most horror movies do not have a message; they're just there for cheap scares and to make money. But I mean, I compared it to Hereditary earlier, and while I don't think that this movie necessarily is as like phenomenal and unique as Hereditary, I think that its message is better because I don't know. I just think its message will resonate with more people on a deeper level. Whereas Hereditary, I think, just does a great job with the atmosphere. But anyways, I really hope you enjoyed this video and my return to YouTube after a while. I apologize for being away, but like I said earlier, I've just been busy and I haven't really had ideas. But hey, I'm here now, and I'm putting my foot down and I'm making another video. So if you enjoy it, consider leaving a like or subscribing. It would just show that this style of video works. And if you'd like to see more like it, leave a comment or just whatever you want to do. But hey, I hope you had a good Thanksgiving, and I hope you have a good day, and I hope you continue to have a good holiday season. Thank you for watching, and Risen Phoenix out.